What happens when one of country music's biggest stars goes head-to-head with one of daytime television's most fearless interviewers? You're about to find out. This story follows Blake Shelton, a man known for his charm, humor, and heartfelt country songs, as he steps into a studio expecting nothing more than a light-hearted chat, only to find himself walking straight into an on-air ambush that no one in the audience could have predicted. The evening began like any other broadcast of Jenna Bush's talk show. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, thrilled to see Blake Shelton in person. Fresh off the release of his latest album, Blake was in a great mood, ready to talk about his music and his comeback. The lights glowed across the studio, the cameras were set, and producers promised an uplifting conversation. Jenna appeared on stage in a sharp suit, smiling broadly as she waved to the audience. But if you looked closely, her expression carried something else, an edge, a spark in her eyes that hinted tonight would not be the usual safe celebrity interview. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jenna called out, her voice smooth and practiced, "please welcome the one and only Blake Shelton." The crowd erupted in applause as Blake walked out, cowboy hat tilted just right, his wide grin lighting up the room. He waved to fans, clearly in high spirits, and took his seat across from Jenna. At first, everything seemed normal. The conversation opened with jokes about his flight, small talk about his time on the road, and even a funny story about fishing. Blake leaned into his relaxed Oklahoma charm, making the audience laugh and clap along. For a while, it felt like exactly the kind of interview fans had been hoping to see. Then the tone shifted. Jenna leaned forward, her smile never leaving, but her voice sharpening just enough to cut the air. "So, Blake, let's talk about this amazing comeback of yours. Your album is climbing the charts. People are talking about your return to that authentic country sound. But let me ask you this. How authentic is this comeback, really?" The room fell silent. Blake's smile faltered, just slightly. His eyes narrowed as he studied Jenna, trying to figure out where she was going. "Well," he said slowly, "I'd like to think it's as real as it gets. This is me going back to the music I love." Jenna's expression didn't soften. Instead, she leaned back, almost savoring the moment. "But isn't this the same story we've heard before? A few years back, your music wasn't charting, your albums weren't selling the way they used to. Some say your personal life got in the way of your career. And now suddenly you're back, rebranding yourself as authentic again. Isn't this just good marketing?" The tension hit the room instantly. You could see audience members shifting in their seats, whispering to each other. This wasn't the friendly conversation they had come to watch. Blake's publicist, seated off-camera, was already shaking their head and gesturing frantically toward producers. Blake tried to hold his composure, gripping the armrests of his chair until his knuckles turned white. His Oklahoma drawl grew thicker as he answered, "Jenna, I've been in this business long enough to know there are ups and downs. I've never pretended otherwise. I've made mistakes, sure, but this music I'm making now, it's real. It's me. And my fans know that." But Jenna wasn't done. "You say it's real, but let's not ignore the fact that people in the industry were starting to count you out. Some said you'd lost your edge. Some even said you were more focused on your television appearances than your music. So why should people believe this comeback isn't just another reinvention to stay relevant?" The audience gasped. The energy in the room had shifted from laughter to unease. It was no longer an interview, it was a confrontation. Blake's jaw tightened. His easygoing charm was slipping, replaced by something colder, sharper. He leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "Jenna, I don't owe anybody an explanation about staying relevant. I make music because it's who I am. If people want to question that, that's their choice. But don't sit here and tell me this is just some act. Because I've been doing this long before anybody cared about what talk shows I was on." A heavy silence fell across the studio. For a moment, Jenna didn't respond. She simply smiled, but this time the smile looked more like a challenge. And that's when Blake made his move. He pushed back his chair, stood up, and adjusted his jacket. The crowd gasped again, realizing what was happening. Blake Shelton, the country superstar everyone came to see, was walking off set, live, on air. "You know what?" Blake said, his voice carrying across the stunned studio. "I came here to talk about music, not to get picked apart like this. If that's what this show is about, then I'm done." The audience erupted, Some booing, others cheering, everyone shocked. Jenna sat back in her chair, unflinching, as if this was the exact reaction she'd been hoping for. Producers rushed to cut to commercial as Blake disappeared backstage, leaving behind a storm that would dominate headlines for days. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was proof of how unpredictable and explosive live television can be when egos, reputations, and sharp questions collide. Blake Shelton walked onto Jenna Bush's talk show stage with a big smile and the kind of easy charm that had made him a country superstar. The crowd roared with excitement as he waved and settled into his chair, expecting the usual safe conversation about music, life, and his new album. For the first few minutes, everything seemed fine. Jenna complimented him on his comeback, asked about his tour, and even joked with him about his fishing trips. Blake laughed along, relaxed and comfortable. The audience clapped, happy to see their favorite singer in such good spirits. But then, the mood shifted. Jenna leaned in, her smile still plastered on her face, but her tone sharper now. "Blake, you talk about authenticity, but let me ask you, how real is this comeback? Isn't it true that your career had some serious trouble before this? Isn't this just another rebranding to save your image?" The room went still. The laughter stopped. Blake straightened in his chair. His smile faded just slightly as he answered carefully, his voice calm but firm. "Jenna, I think you might be misinformed. Every artist goes through highs and lows. That's part of this business. But to say my music isn't authentic, or that my setbacks were some kind of personal failure, that's crossing a line." "Am I crossing a line?" Jenna shot back, her voice rising. "Or am I just asking what other interviewers are too polite to ask? Because let's face it, Blake, there are stories. Stories about your behavior on set. Conflicts with other artists. A pattern of being difficult that goes beyond normal career struggles. And now, just when you need it most, you suddenly find your roots again? Sounds convenient, doesn't it?" The audience gasped. The friendly atmosphere was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. You could feel the tension in every corner of the studio. Some fans in the crowd looked shocked, others leaned forward, unable to look away. Blake's jaw tightened. For a second, it seemed like he might stand up and walk out right then. But instead, he leaned closer to Jenna, his voice low and sharp. "You know what, Jenna? I came here thinking we'd talk about music and maybe give your viewers something positive. But it looks like you had a different plan from the moment I walked in. So why don't you just cut to the chase and tell me what this is really about?" Jenna's smile widened. But this time, it wasn't friendly, it was predatory. "What this is about, Blake, is honesty. Something this industry could use a lot more of. And honestly, your fans deserve to know the truth before they spend money on your concerts and albums." The camera operators zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion, Blake's growing anger, Jenna's smug satisfaction. It was the kind of footage producers dream about. Viral clips, trending headlines, non-stop chatter online. Blake sat back, a dangerous calm settling over him. His voice was quiet, but the anger behind it was clear. "You want honesty? Here it is. For the past 10 minutes, you've been trying to tear me down with gossip and rumors. None of it is fact. None of it comes from people who were even there. That's not honesty, Jenna. That's poison." The studio air grew heavier. No one dared to clap or boo. Everyone just watched, frozen in the storm that was unfolding. But Jenna wasn't finished. Her eyes gleamed as she pressed harder. "Rumors? Let's talk facts, Blake. Complaints from your own record label about missed studio sessions. Producers who refused to work with you again. Collaborations that collapsed because people said you were impossible to deal with. That's not gossip. That's the record." Blake's face turned red. His calm mask cracked, his voice rising with anger. "An industry insider? You mean some coward who hides behind anonymity because they don't have the guts to say it to my face? And you're calling that journalism? That's pathetic, Jenna." "Anonymous sources are how the truth comes out in Hollywood," Jenna snapped back, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "People are afraid to speak out because they know there are consequences. But eventually, the truth always finds its way to the surface. And I think your fans deserve better than smoke and mirrors." The crowd was spellbound. Some held their phones under jackets, secretly recording despite the no-recording policy. Others just stared in disbelief. This was no longer an interview, it was a showdown. Blake suddenly stood, towering over Jenna. His chair scraped loudly against the studio floor, the sound cutting through the silence. He glared down at her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You want the truth, Jenna? Here it is. I've been in this business for over 20 years. I've worked hard, I've stumbled, and I've gotten back up. And I've seen people like you come and go, people who think tearing others down makes good television. People who hide behind a desk and a microphone and call it honesty while they try to destroy reputations." "Sit down, Blake," Jenna said sharply, her voice hard with authority. "We're not done." "Oh, we're done," Blake shot back, his voice booming now. "We were done the moment you ambushed me instead of having a real conversation. But since you want to drag dirty laundry into the spotlight, maybe we should talk about your track record instead." The color drained from Jenna's face. For the first time, she looked rattled. This was not how she expected the script to play out. The studio audience erupted into nervous whispers. Some gasped, others cheered. The clash between Blake Shelton and Jenna Bush had become something no one could have imagined, a raw, explosive confrontation that blurred the line between entertainment and war. And as Blake stood over her, refusing to back down, it was clear, nothing about this moment would ever be forgotten. Blake Shelton had come to Jenna Bush's talk show expecting a normal TV appearance. He thought it would be light-hearted, with questions about his music, his career, and maybe some jokes to entertain the audience. Instead, he found himself in the middle of a fiery clash that quickly spiraled out of control. At first, Jenna acted like the friendly host she was known to be. She smiled, asked Blake about his album, and seemed to welcome him warmly. But soon, her tone shifted. She began pressing him with sharp questions about his past career struggles, rumors from the music industry, and whispers about his behavior behind the scenes. Blake tried to stay calm. He reminded Jenna that every artist has ups and downs, and that setbacks are just part of the music business. But Jenna kept pushing harder, her voice growing sharper as she accused him of reinventing himself only for publicity. The studio fell silent. The crowd, who had expected a fun interview, now sat frozen, watching the tension grow between the country superstar and the TV host. Cameras zoomed in, catching every glance, every smirk, every clenched jaw. Blake finally leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You want honesty, Jenna? You've been sitting here trying to tear down everything I've worked for based on gossip and rumors. That's not journalism. That's an ambush." Jenna fired back immediately. "This isn't an ambush, Blake. This is accountability. The public deserves the truth. They deserve to know if your comeback story is just a carefully planned marketing trick." The atmosphere in the studio turned electric. Audience members shifted in their seats. Some whispered nervously while others grabbed their phones, trying to secretly record what was happening despite the no-recording rule. This wasn't the cheerful, polished talk show they'd expected. This was something raw and explosive. Blake's calm began to break. He stood up, towering over Jenna as she remained seated, still smiling but with a sharp edge. "You think tearing people down is good TV? You think spreading lies is entertainment? You don't want real answers, Jenna. You want drama." "Sit down, Blake," Jenna demanded, her voice steady but her eyes showing a flicker of unease. "This is my show. My rules. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't do interviews." "Tough questions?" Blake barked out a bitter laugh. "You call this tough? No, this is cheap. Real tough questions are about music, creativity, and hard work. But you don't care about that. You just want to corner your guests so you can get headlines the next morning." The standoff escalated further. Now both host and guest were on their feet, standing across the small table, staring each other down. The producers waved frantically from behind the cameras, but neither Blake nor Jenna cared. They were too locked into their battle. "You want to talk about headlines?" Blake said, stepping closer. His voice was low, but filled with anger. "Let's talk about you, Jenna. Let's talk about the guests who've walked off your show this year. Let's talk about the complaints filed with the network. People are tired of your ambushes. They're tired of watching you rip people apart." Gasps erupted from the audience. This was no longer an interview, it was a public showdown. Jenna, her face flushed, snapped back. You think you can come on my stage and lecture me? You've had your share of problems too, Blake. Missed sessions, fights with producers, collaborations falling apart. That's not gossip, that's fact. Blake's eyes burned with fury. Fact? You mean anonymous whispers from people too scared to put their name behind it? That's not fact, Jenna. That's cowardice. And you're hiding behind it because you've got nothing real to throw at me. The air in the studio felt heavy, as though everyone was holding their breath. Viewers at home would soon see what daytime television had never dared show before, two powerful personalities completely losing control on live TV. Blake moved closer to Jenna's desk, his voice dropping again, now dangerous and cutting. Do you know what people in this industry say about you? They warn their clients not to come on your show. They laugh about how you ambush people for ratings. You're not respected, Jenna. You're feared, and not in a good way. The audience gasped louder this time. Jenna's confident mask cracked for the first time, her voice trembling just slightly as she said, "You're out of line." "I'm out of line," Blake exploded, his face red with anger. "You dragged me here under false pretenses. You lied about the interview. You tried to humiliate me in front of my fans. And now you're calling me out of line because I won't sit here and let you slander me." The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second. The control room considered cutting to commercial, but Blake stopped Jenna before she could even suggest it. "No break. No reset. No chance for you to twist this later. We're finishing this here, in front of everyone. Right now." The studio was silent except for Blake's sharp words and Jenna's quick breaths. The audience sat glued to their seats, unable to look away. What had started as a simple celebrity interview had turned into one of the most unforgettable clashes in live television history. And everyone knew, after this night, neither Blake Shelton nor Jenna Bush's career would ever be the same. Blake turned his eyes straight to the camera, ignoring Jenna completely. His voice was steady, sharp, and full of fire. "America, I want you to see what's really happening here. This was never meant to be an honest interview. From the very beginning, this was planned as an ambush. A trap. She never wanted to talk about music, my career, or my journey. This was about tearing me down for ratings." The audience gasped. Jenna's face twisted with anger at being called out on her own stage. "Don't you dare turn your back on me, Blake Shelton," she shouted. "This is my show. You will answer my questions, or you'll leave this stage right now." Blake spun back toward her, his eyes blazing. "Get out." "Don't worry, I'm leaving. But first, the world needs to hear the truth. You want to talk about honesty? Let's talk about how you trick guests. You promise friendly interviews, but what you deliver is character assassination. That's your game. That's your brand." The crowd murmured louder, their whispers rippling across the studio. Jenna tried to regain control, but Blake's words were like a hammer. "Legitimate," he repeated with a bitter laugh. "You want to talk about legitimate? How about the 3 guests who filed complaints to your network this year? How about the producers who are already trying to leave because they're tired of being part of this circus? How about the ratings that are falling week after week? That's not rumor. That's reality." The director should have cut to commercial, but even he was frozen, watching history unfold. The rawness, the fire, the truth, this was something money couldn't buy. Jenna's composure cracked. "You think you can come on my stage and insult me? You think you can lie about my career, my reputation, my staff?" "I don't need to lie," Blake shot back. His voice was calm again, almost chilling. "The difference between us is simple. I put my name behind every word I say. You hide behind sources and gossip. I stand here, looking you in the eye, and tell you the truth. That's the difference." Then Blake did the unthinkable. He walked right up to Jenna's desk, leaned in close, and whispered words the whole world could hear. "You thought you could bully me like you've bullied every other guest. But I don't need you. I don't need this show. And I don't need your cheap attempts to humiliate me. What I do need, what America needs, is honesty. And you've forgotten what that even looks like." Jenna's face flushed red as she screamed, "Security! Get him out of here now!" But Blake simply removed his mic, tossed it onto her desk, and laughed. "Save yourself the trouble, Jenna. I'm already gone. But before I leave, I want everyone watching to remember what you saw here today. Remember how your host treats her guests. Remember how she acts when someone finally stands up to her." He walked toward the exit as the audience erupted, half gasps, half applause. Jenna shrieked one final desperate plea. "You can't just walk out on me. I'm not done with you." Blake turned at the edge of the stage. His final words cut like a knife. "No, Jenna. I'm done with you. And after today, I think a lot of people will be too." The studio fell silent as Blake Shelton strode off the stage, leaving Jenna standing alone, her face pale with shock. The cameras captured every second, sealing her humiliation forever. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation would be everywhere: social media, news outlets, and late-night shows. For the first time in her career, Jenna Bush was speechless. She had picked the wrong guest, pushed too far, and underestimated the one man who refused to be bullied. Blake, meanwhile, walked away taller than ever, his dignity intact, his voice unshaken, and his reputation stronger than before. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. This was a moment that would change television forever. What do you think? Did Blake go too far, or was he right to stand up for himself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more explosive stories like this, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the drama.